Hello, everybody. Today I want to talk to you about the difference between law and rule. I've already did a talk about the difference between can and will. And this is something like it, but it's a little different. You see, the law is something that the Lord our God treasures. He will not break the law. For example, in the Ten Commandments, he says, "Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor." The Lord our God will not do that. He will not bear false witness against you, nor will he support such an act. But everyone says, well, "Thou shalt not kill" is also in the Ten Commandments. Yet we die. Well, that act is deemed righteous. It's not done with malice. See, when the Lord our God speaks a word, it would make him a liar if he reversed what he said. I mean, that word goes back to the Garden of Eden. When Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden, the Lord told them plainly, "Behold the tree of knowledge. Thou shalt not eat nor touch of this fruit from this tree of the knowledge of good and evil. For on the day thou shalt touch or eatest thereof, ye shall surely die." Now, that was when the Lord told them that if you do this, you're going to die, which is why we die. See, God is not killing us. We unloosed that curse on ourselves when Adam bit on that forbidden fruit, and when Eve ate that forbidden fruit. That's when that sin got released on us, and the curse of death loomed over us, and it's loomed over us ever since, right until the last man standing. But whatever day that will be, and whatever person that will be, it's the way it's going to be, because the Lord cannot say, "Well, okay, I've changed my mind." That would take away his righteousness and his holiness and destroy his glory. So he cannot change that. These things that are written in the Ten Commandments are the law. 5 of the commandments are the relationship between man and God, and the other 5 are the relationship between man and man. For those who don't know that. And the law is the law. Without the law, there can be no sin. As I mentioned before, there can't be a top without a bottom. There cannot be a front without a back, a left without a right, an inward without an outward. Now, the Lord can make such a thing, but I believe he would be working himself to death if he tried to maintain it. And this is why that the rules, and we're going to talk about what rules are here in a little bit, are set forth the way that they are. And the law is written in stone. Rules, however, are not written in stone. And people go, "Well, the law is rules." Well, you can kind of look at it that way. You can kind of think of it that way, but technically speaking, it's not that way. The law is the law. The law is the do's and the do-nots. And if you break those laws, then the wage of sin is death. Whether you tell one lie or 5 trillion of them, the wage of sin is death. Rules, however, can be broken and manipulated, not the law. The law is in stone. Stone does not bend. If you remember correctly from your teachings in Exodus, when Moses went up to the mountain for those 40 days and 40 nights, he did not eat or drink. And the Lord appeared and wrote with his own hand the first set of the 10 Commandments. And they were written in stone. And as I just said, stone does not bend. It breaks. It's either together or it ain't. Rules, however, are not written in stone. They're flexible. I'll give you a perfect example of this. How many of you out there have played the old game of Monopoly? I've surely played thousands of hours of Monopoly out there. How many of you, though, have actually played Monopoly by the strict factory rules from which the game was created? I doubt very many of you will put your hand up with that one. Some of these rules that come from the factory with the game of Monopoly state that when you're in jail, you are still allowed to collect your rent as to which you are otherwise entitled. Which means if a player lands on Park Place or Boardwalk that has a hotel on it, Park Place was $1,500, Boardwalk was $2,000. If a player landed on that and you were in jail, well, you could still bankrupt them. But people have changed or manipulated that rule to say, well, you can't collect that rent as long as you're in jail. Ha ha. Sorry, loser. That's a free space now until you get out of jail. So when they land on Park Place or Boardwalk, then the owner gets nothing except a big laugh and a big smile. And everybody else is happy about it because they did not have to fork over that kind of cash. That's what I mean by manipulating the rules and bending the rules or changing the rules or even in some cases breaking the rules. Man tends to confuse the word law with rule. The law written by God doesn't change. The law has been the same since its creation. And it's not going to change. It is the basis that sin is tried against. The law would have no teeth without sin. Sin would not exist without the law. That's also written in the Bible. But rules, however, they are just a set of regulations. For example, rules are what were established by God when He created the earth. To us, to mankind, and especially Mr. Isaac Newton, the law of gravity. The apple fell on his head, and everybody remembers that hilarious cartoon that we used to watch back in the day from Schoolhouse Rock. Him sitting under a tree, an apple hit him in the head. And it talked about the discovery of the law of gravity. To mankind, it's a law because mankind cannot authentically violate or break the law of gravity. We can bend it. We can put rocket boosters on something and launch it into space, which bends the law of gravity, but it doesn't officially break it. What I mean by breaking it is we cannot design a house that will float above the earth. We just cannot do that. Now, we can make a balloon filled with helium and it will float above the earth, but we cannot make it float 10 feet above the earth. It will continue to rise until it goes all the way up into the atmosphere and can be seen no more. Eventually it'll pop, and we never know what happens to the rest of it. But we cannot break the law of gravity. That's where the Lord our God comes in. One of my favorite parts to the book of Exodus is when it talks about how God parted the Red Sea. And it has to be fun for the Lord our God, being able to manipulate and bend rules from which He established on this planet. That's how He looks wonderful to us and amazes us. And it would amaze me to see water run uphill or split wide open from a raging sea. And, to see the earth just open its mouth and swallow up something. That would just, not only would it terrify me, but it would amaze me at the same time, because I would hope that He would not do the same to me. That would be the part that would scare me. But the part that would amaze me is the fact that it happened. And God has that ability to do that, much like we do with the rules of Monopoly. Just like in the rules of Monopoly, it says no money will be placed under the free parking space. Well, we cheat and put $500 or $1,500 under it. That way, when you land on it, you get a payday. So we do that. That's how we manipulate those rules to enhance the gameplay. Well, that's how the Lord can do things here on earth. He can manipulate and enhance His gameplay on earth, so to speak. Forgive me, Lord, because it's not really a game, but for the people that I'm educating, I'm only saying that so that they understand. Your power is almighty. The wind and the waves bow to your will. Whatever you will to happen, it's going to happen. One of the rules that you established on this earth is that the wind generally blows from the west towards the east. It doesn't always do it, but 90% of the time, you can look at any weather map from any weather station, and typically you're going to see wind coming from some direction of the west, blowing in some direction toward the east. And that's caused by the spinning of the earth. But as you read in Exodus, it says that the Lord caused a mighty easterly wind to come in and hit the water with enough force to divide that water and provide the dry land for the children of Israel to walk on as they crossed the Red Sea. Now, it didn't have to be written in the Bible what else occurred. That wind came down with such force that, have you ever squeezed all of the water out of a sponge? Well, that wind came down on that muddy bottom with such force that it squeezed all of the water out of that mud and made a wall of water on both sides for them to walk across. And they were very well protected, because that wind, as it blew down, it separated and left them a clear path while it kept the waters at bay. And the Lord received glory for this, because the children of Israel were totally amazed that the Lord did this and that He could do this. This is what God does. He can do these things. God has the power. If He wants water to run uphill, He will simply change what we call the law of gravity, and water will run uphill. We will never be able to explain it. We will never be able to make it happen, because we as humans are bound by those rules. But God Himself is not. He can operate in a plane outside those rules. But when it comes to the law, He maintains His barrier inside the law, because that would damage or destroy His righteousness, His holiness, and His justified ability. And He does not want to do that. He has promised He would not do such things, and He won't. That's where the description of can and will and the definitions were explained in another speech that I give about it. See, the Lord our God, He has thought all of this through, and this is just something that He kind of shared with me. as to how things happen. Now there are a great many things that the Lord could do that it would just make me just sit there and go and my mind would be totally blown. I mean, the fact that He even shared something like this with me blows my mind, because I'm just little old me. I'm nobody. I'm made from the salt and the ash and the soot of the earth, and yet He took the time to share something like this with me. So the difference between the law and rules is that the law is written in stone and is not flexible. It is where it's going to always be. Stone does not bend. Rules, however, are not engraved in stone. They might be written on something for us to where we cannot violate them or we cannot break them. But the Lord our God, He operates outside that. He operates on a plane that we will never know or understand. And He can do these things. He can manipulate rules that He established. Man created the rules to Monopoly. Man can manipulate those rules to make the game more fun or more interesting. In the game of Monopoly, there's no such thing as loans. Well, I've known people to play Monopoly and grant up to a $10,000 loan just to make the game go longer. Why, I don't know, because the game's long enough by itself, but I have heard people that have done that. I've also heard other things. People have changed and manipulated the rules to where in order to take a ride on the Reading Railroad, which is a chance card, you must own the Pennsylvania Railroad. So how can you take a ride on the Reading if you don't own the next railroad? So that card was basically a wasted card and thrown back into the deck. People do what they do in order to make the game interesting, fun, more difficult, or to manipulate the rules. So that I guess it's to keep your interest. That's kind of what the Lord does too, to keep the interest of the children of Israel, to show them what He can do and what He will do. I mean, He fought Egypt for them. He parted the Red Sea. He barred the Pharaoh with that fire. He led them out of Egypt with an stretched out arm and a strong hand. And, I mean, He made Moses appear as a god to Pharaoh with all of the wonders that he brought down, and He distinguished between the Egyptians and the children of Israel so that no plague would harm neither man nor beast nor crop in Goshen. Yet it destroyed Egypt. So, I mean, the Lord can and has the power to do what He says, and everything bows to His will. That is the difference between the law and rules.